What are the major lessons to successfully raising capital? I'm sure this is a question that you get asked all the time. As somebody who has been successful raising capital, I believe there's a unique perspective you've had, because you've not just done it once, you've done it a couple of times. So again, I'll ask, what are the major lessons to successfully raise capital?
I think in hindsight, talking to friends who've done this, I mean, for me, Richard, I'm unapologetically Christian, and so I apply a lot of biblical truths to what I do. So I've just come to realize the Bible says if you see a diligent man, he will stand before kings. So diligence is one of the things. And so as people come to look at a due diligence on the organization, be diligent about how you deliver information to them, data to your investors. Believability of the idea is almost at par with believability of the person. And so I think people have to either have, so if you're doing it for the first time, you're going to have a challenge in that you have to have a really compelling concept, because what people buy into is your experience. I can't sit here and pretend to you that the fact that I've not done it before helps. But if I've never done it before, what happened those days is that I knocked on 200 doors and one opened. Whereas now down the line, I knock on fewer doors and they open, because either someone really likes you or they can't stand you. They love your story or can't stand your story. So you know very quickly, is it going south? Is it going north? Is it happening? Is it not happening? So I'd say my experience is research, data preparedness, if possible. The secret I've discovered works very well is a minimum viable pilot.
Product.
Something that you can actually demo, that I've done this to this point, I just need to scale and I need your help to scale. That does a lot for people than a concept on paper. So, to be realistic, the last capital I raised, I first went and made sure I had a contract from a very large company. It wasn't an easy contract to get, but I had a contract. So because I had a contract, my experience plus believability kind of paired up, because how did you get a contract from this large organization? So that's how you start to find people saying, okay, I don't want to miss this bus. The fact that the person has this contract, it helps. So have something. You have to bring something to the table. If you're raising capital, bring something to the table. You're not going to just convince someone because you have an idea that they should put money behind you. And another thing I've seen with a lot of us younger entrepreneurs is getting upset because people say no. My God, you will have many no's. You will have many no's. I got used to no's, and I realized it's not personal. Don't personalize this thing. It's your dream, it's your vision. But I've seen people who refuse to speak to me again because I didn't back them. And we're not trying to be best friends. I do wish them well, but not everybody will be as passionate. First of all, nobody's as passionate about your idea as you are. And that thing you have to always realize. I was speaking somewhere and I was telling them, when you study the book of Nehemiah, Nehemiah went and asked the king in the Bible about whether he could have certain resources for going to build up the walls of Jerusalem. But first he had to speak the king's language. When he came to the king, he said, the city of my fathers and ancestors. Now, he was talking to a Phoenician king. That means these Phoenicians were so big on ancestral stuff. So he didn't just come, because remember, it's the king who had shut them down. So he didn't just come and start saying, Jerusalem is messed up, I need help. He said, the city of my fathers and my ancestors lies in ruins. Immediately, he tapped into something the king was passionate about.
There was connection. He made sure there was a connection. So you can't just come ask for capital because you're passionate. Make a connection. Can I just piggyback on this and say, everybody always asks the question about how to raise investment. I want to push on to this question and say, when is the investment wrong? because the desperation for looking for capital, you begin saying yes to everybody. So I want to know, when should you be like, or in your life, have you had times when you're like, I wish I didn't take this investment because now it's costly?
Yeah.
So the question I think I'm trying to push and ask is, what kind of investments would you be like, yo, I know you want money, but keep away from this because of this and this and this?
I mean, so money is a means to an end. You've got to have it in your heart, mind. What's your end game? And what kind of capital brings you to your end game? Because some capital is punitive. I'll say that and risk to say this. Sometimes you have to live to fight another day.
Sometimes you have to live to fight another day.
So that means that you could end up taking that capital that's not as ideal, but it's the only one available. I'm not going to tell someone walk away from it because it's not ideal. I don't think you're going to find 100% ideal capital unless it's yours. Anybody you bring into your business, they're called angel investors, but there's sometimes nothing angelic. There's nothing angelic about that kind of money. So, you have to study dilution clauses, how to protect yourself, right? Mark Zuckerberg doesn't own all of Facebook. In fact, he's not a majority shareholder in the sense of 50 plus 1%.
Yes.
Right? The last I checked, I think he was at about 11%. I don't know where he is now, but he has protected himself by the kind of protection rights that he could get for a founder. So sometimes you may not necessarily be the majority shareholder, but you could get protections as a founder. You could get sophisticated in how the paperwork is done. The fascination I find with people who want to own 90% of their businesses, I've found in the area of things like what I do in fintech, that world moves so fast that to stay as a 90% owner for 5 years can cause you to have a slow death. You could end up becoming 90% of something that never moves, right? Equity Bank is a publicly traded bank. Has anyone ever bothered to look at what the shareholding of Dr. Mwangi is? I guarantee you it's not much. So you don't have, but look what he's built. Look what that entire team has built, right? Admired all over the world. I don't know if he gets the right admiration in Kenya, but admired all over the world for what they've achieved. But he's not necessarily a 20% shareholder. This fascination with shareholding, I know you need to keep control, but explore ways to be protected as you look for this capital. So I won't say don't take the capital, because how will you scale? How will you have experience? How will you grow? So case in point, a gentleman came and told me how he refused certain capital 4 years ago. He came to see me just about 3-4 weeks ago. Nothing has changed in his business. He's now saying, maybe I need to shut it down. He might have stood a chance, because that capital would have changed his business and how he was looking at things, and sometimes the help that comes is also showing you your blind spots. Let me tell you, Richard, one of the things entrepreneurship has taught me, especially as I'm getting older, I'm not getting any younger, is the power of self-awareness. And some capital brings help for you to know what kind of person you are. You may be a great founder, but a horrible CEO. You may be a great innovator, a horrible administrator. Capital will tell you. Capital will tell you. So sometimes you may say that capital was bad, but maybe you're just not self-aware, that you're not a very good leader. And you need to know, what are my blind spots? Am I a self-righteous, annoying, I don't know, use some
individual.
Individual. Are you with me?
Yep.
So capital is tricky, but capital can be revealing. And the more you mature, the more capital likes people who have matured, because they understand that you're not gonna get all things ticked in the boxes you want ticked, but you can live with this and not live with that. You make the choices.
Again, I'll stick to this conversation about raising capital. When, and I'm just, some of these questions are coming as you speak.
Please.
So I find that some people want capital immediately they're starting the business. And I feel like sometimes you need to not have the capital to not grow, and sort of when should you get capital? Is it okay to sometimes start without capital? And I know that sounds weird saying that, but what are your thoughts on when should you ask for capital?
I think that's a tough one to answer, because end game is always, someone has to know their end game. So yes, it's okay not to start with capital, but how long will you take to scale? Having been exposed to different markets, different countries, there's different flavors to how capital works in certain places, right? Square just made an acquisition of a buy now, pay later business out of Australia and paid billions and billions of dollars for it. That company has never made a profit, right? And Afterpay is the company. And then you've got valuations of other types of businesses that have scaled to 15 countries in the Western world. People don't buy the bottom line, really, in the sense they buy something else in those businesses, which is growth.
Yep.
So sometimes you have to figure out what your end game is. Do you want to get acquired for growth? Do you want to build a family enterprise? If you want to build a family enterprise, what you're saying works. If this is more of a cash cow for you and your wife, for you guys to have a particular way of life every week, knowing that we sold 1 million avocados, it's just you and I, nobody else, so be it. You make a call based on what you want to build. If you have ambitions to say, I would like my business to be valued at $400 million in the next 5 years, if I achieve 1, 2, 3, then you decide how you want to grow. You can't get there without capital.
I get that.
And so this capital opens doors for you, scales for you, helps you grow, helps you understand different things. And capital is different. There's African capital, there's Western capital, there's money that cannot come to Africa, there's money that cannot go out of Africa. You know, you have to really do your homework to know, where do I want to sit? So, case in point, in one of my businesses, I did what you call a pre-seed. And then from a pre-seed series, then I move into a series A. My pre-seed valuations determine how I will, my last pre-seed valuation may determine how I want my series A to be valued. Pre-seed is a place you can get money before the business has really kicked off, but certain things have to be there. Then I go through this process of proving concept. The moment I can prove pilot and that now all I need to do is scale and I can show certain transactions and certain volumes, I get the right people to buy into it. In between that journey, if you consider that a pre-series and then this journey here, there's some advisors you need to get. Some amazing people who can get you to scale the right way. And these guys are found in different parts of the world. You'll find some in London, in New York. They have connections to a lot of funds. So don't necessarily go out on what you call a road show without these guys. So they become very good tellers of your story. They get to understand your business, and there's nothing you're doing. They will ask you very hard questions. They will tell you you're not ready. They will tell you stuff you don't want to hear. I'm now talking to people who want to go this direction. So for you to say, I raised 10 million in Series A Kenya shillings, I want to raise 500 million, pre-series, I want to raise 500 million. You have to have this people.
And let me ask, actually, I think to better articulate my question was, definitely you need capital. But I feel like, is there a perspective of in pre-seed where you may, at such a low valuation, probably the lowest valuation that the company should be at is at pre-seed. Now you're selling off 80% of the company. So from a raising investors perspective, should you have a limitation on the equity that you give out of your business at this pre-seed?
Yeah, so I look at it in a few ways. That's a very good question. So at pre-seed, you have to ask yourself, So you can leave from Nairobi to Mombasa and decide you want to be on the road for 12 hours. You just go stopping, doing whatever. Or you can say I need to be in Mombasa in 4 hours. Your speed will be determined by what time you need to arrive there.
Yep.
Is that fair? So it's the same with a business. The speed at which I need to arrive at my end game should determine what kind of pre-series conversations I'm gonna have. I have no problem being a 20% shareholder, just to give you an idea, of a pre-series game, or of a pre-series raise, where the intention is for me to scale to become a unicorn in 5 years.
Because you'll be 20% of $1 billion company.
10% maybe, because I'll still face some dilution in between.
Even if it's 5%.
$1 billion game. So the important thing is, who is in my pre-series? Who did I bring in? So I selectively picked a particular type of people at pre-series that bring so much value to my end game thinking. It wasn't by chance. And I have no problem with us having smaller shares because the end game is clear. And it's worth the risk. It may never happen, but I am aware by being a 90% shareholder, that's a hard thing to achieve. You're not going to get serious people coming and saying, I'll take 1%.
Yep.
You're not. If you find them, not
for the unicorn valuation,
not of something you haven't built yet. Right? People can take 1% of a very serious organization, but you haven't built it. So sometimes who you may need to have besides money is value. What value do they bring to their table? Are you with me?
100%.
And so you have to understand your end game. Now, if I want to be a farmer and I'm willing to take 25 years to build my farm, then I don't need to give away too much shareholding at the beginning. I want to build a generational company. I'm starting a auto repair shop that I want to build for my children to also take over. I don't need to over-engineer my pre-series. I want to stay in control. Even at 20%, you can have a lot of control. It just depends on who are your lawyers and how is that work being done. So you want to reach unicorn as your end game, and unicorn here meaning a business valued at over $1 billion, then you have to play your cards right from who's here in the beginning to who will be at the end. That value chain is extremely important. You want to be a mom and pop shop? Own 98% of your business. Don't be in a rush. Take 12 hours to reach Mombasa. Take your time, but know what you're building and know that it'll give you a milli here, 2 million there, and sort out your few things here, pay school fees there, but you're not going to go. Let me say this about unicorns. Sometimes in these fast-paced companies, the people who look down upon them, they don't like them because they feel the fundamentals don't make sense. Fundamentals meaning unit economics. What is the bottom line looking like? What's your EBIT? I've seen companies valued at $4 billion that have no EBIT. Zero.
For those who may not understand EBIT explanation.
Earnings before income tax, because that just basically shows your bottom line. So sometimes some of these companies are valued on EBIT. They say that sometimes in fintechs you can get 10 to even 25x EBIT. So if your EBIT is $1 million, you can be valued at $25 million, $10 million, because they can see you have unit economics makes sense. I found that what you'd call European money, London money, loves that brick and mortar type of thinking. American money is very driven towards this growth story. That's why you can find a pre-series in America for $20 million and not find a pre-series in Africa for more than $5 million. Why? Because those guys sometimes are driving a growth conversation. Grow this thing. Uber may never have an EBIT.
Yep.
But I don't want to sound too sophisticated. Sometimes the sacrifice is for an entrepreneur to have EBIT they decide, I won't open in Uganda and Tanzania and Nigeria because if I do, I have to spend money that I'm making. Because of that, I won't have a bottom line.
Yep.
So sometimes to have EBIT, you have to sacrifice growth. So the argument is always, what do you want? Do you want growth or do you want EBIT? And sometimes what I'd call not very ambitious investors, if I can use a kind word, want both.
They want That's rough.
It's very tough for some entrepreneurs to achieve two of those lines that give me growth and give me EBIT. At an early stage of a business, you're not going to achieve those things. So sometimes money you get can be very crude in what it wants you to achieve. And you have to drive and be smart to say, no, I'm going to give you growth. I'm not going to give you EBIT. Because my ambitions, the ambitions of what I've put out in my business plan is to be in 20 markets or to have a diversity of products to bring us to that level. So that's how you look at capital.
Ooh, I love it. I absolutely love it. Okay, let me try and switch up the conversations.
Okay.
Over here a bit. Okay. How do you plan and build cash reserves?
Cash reserves are a very interesting conversation. So cash reserves come back to what we've just talked about. That whole EBIT versus growth. I'm scared of a business that has to grow, that has to have cash reserves. Because are you then growing at the right pace? Are you... So, and that's why I'll tell you, Richard, I've seen a very fundamental difference in American money versus European money in terms of investment versus African money.
Yep.
Yeah. And then what
African demand cash reserves.
Yes, Africans demand cash reserves. How much money do you have in the bank? Which is good. You need to know that because there are things you have to calculate when you're looking at your business. You have to understand what your cash burn ratio is, right? How much cash am I burning? When am I going to run out of money? So if I'm going to have a Series A by December 2022, do I have enough cash that the business is generating to keep the lights on until that time? Secondly, also when you have cash burn and an investor smells desperation, is also not a good thing. So sometimes you need to approach an investor not when money is finished, when you still have some surplus. And the conversations are very different.
So I love what you're saying there, and I think that's worth repeating. The desperation from an entrepreneur when there's cash burn and lack of reserves, how you approach the investor is very different from when you've got when you're not in a desperate stage.
Your disposition when you're desperate is different from your disposition when you can hold on for a year. And most of these guys can smell it. Put all the smiles you want, they can smell it, they can sniff it. In fact, some of them are called sniffers. They can sniff that desperation, and that means they can get you to dilute a lot more than you need to. So, and to preserve cash burn, you may have to make tough decisions. You may have to make decisions about layoffs. You may have to make decisions about, so what's your team structure like? I'll tell you a mistake a lot of people make when they raise money. They employ a lot of people. I've become very slow at employment. Very slow. I mean, I've refused anymore to have this, I'm not the savior of the world. And I just want to say that in the most polite way I can. I'm not looking for any award of the largest employer of the globe, award, because sometimes entrepreneurs have to differentiate between their charity preferences and running a business. And you can't employ everybody. You just can't. And so
are these lessons that you're
Yeah.
currently building a different business right now.
yeah,
Is this lessons that your previous business taught you? Did you
Yes.
take that approach
yes,
with your previous business?
I appreciate everybody that I've been able to help and build and grow, but I also realize younger people have a temptation. Every time there's a problem, sometimes people want to fill that problem with that person. And you might want to hire smarter than hire faster, because and even styles of hiring. Is this person really worth their salt? Why start them off on a permanent contract? Kenya is not friendly to employers. I'm telling you, when you hire someone, and a lot of countries in Africa, right? In America, I'm allowed to fire at will. But you try that stuff here, you'll find yourself in all manners of tribunals. In South Africa, you can hardly fire a house help. So before I give you permanent contracts, what are my legal options? So I'm dealing with cash burn.
Yep.
So I have to start thinking about, if I'm going to do a Series A and I'm at pre-series, what caliber of people do I have? Now, you have a dilemma in your hands. The type of people you need to do a good Series A are really qualified people. So how do you balance between finding extremely good talent and not having enough cash, maybe in your pre-series, to convince people in your Series A that this is a business worth investing in? It's all, Richard, we can't exhaust this conversation here, but it's all a play around certain benefits, from what you call ESOP, employee share options, to down to short-term contracts to prove your capabilities, short-term contracts to prove to investors that in the event that things don't work out, I don't have any liabilities hanging over my head after this experiment.
Yep.
So I don't have a long-term obligation outside of this. I think you need to pay me $1 million for this advice. So yes, it is information I've gathered over experience and time. It's nothing. You have to employ. You have to bring in the people, but I think you can employ it differently. And the more you get experience, the more you realize this is crucial.
Yeah.
WhatsApp had 40 employees.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. All of them had share options. The guy made everybody a millionaire. Bill Gates was having a major problem with having capital, and he couldn't pay his employees at some point, so he offered some of them shares. Half of them agreed, the other half said no. Well, someone is smiling right now and someone is pissed.
From somebody in fintech, what are the must-haves? CTO? Or for you, who would you be like, this one's can't be under contract, this one's need, can't be under short-term contracts, this one's, there's a part that they play in the organization? And this question, I think I'm being a bit stingy on the fintech aspect of it. What for you are positions where you're like, listen, this role is too important for me to joke? And I say that because globally, that's where the world is going. A lot of people watching this are probably thinking in that space.
I'll give you a pretty unpopular answer. I think everyone's dispensable, including the founder. Everyone. And then let me clarify that by saying, if you start there, then you actually start at the right place. Everyone can go.
Including the founder?
Including the founder. Everyone can go. Because there are moments the founder is bad for the business. So if you start there, then you will build an organization where everyone understands nobody is indispensable. Because I found a problem when somebody thinks they're indispensable. So nobody is. Then you build up from there and decide, what can I do to keep good talent? With it understanding it can go. Because when you're beholden to someone, but then when you finally discover then who must stay, I've found certain things to mean a lot, from share options to
salaries,
office culture to. No, actually, I've found salary is not such a big lever.
Ooh, okay.
It's what most people think. And I'm of the school of thought that if you can't buy into the vision I'm building and what you want is a big salary, then maybe this is not for you. Because that's already a sign. That's already a sign. A believer in a vision, even if they've come from a 10-digit income, will say, you know what? I'll stick my head out for this thing. There's something here. There's something here. And then they'll negotiate very well for a good ESOP package or something. But they'll buy into the vision. So sometimes you'll find people who've come from a career type of environment want to dictate a very high income model to you because you feel you really need that talent. When you're an entrepreneur and when you're a founder and when you're at pre-series stage, you're the janitor.
You're everything.
You're everything.
True,
so
I agree.
Don't allow anyone to hold you hostage around the whole aspect of, you have to pay me $300,000 a year. I can't afford you. It's been real. I don't care how important you are, unless you're the one holding the check for my Series A. Let's just meet later. I can't afford you.
And do investors come in with condition that a certain CFO comes into the company, and this CFO thus demands a certain salary?
I mean, you're talking Series A, Series B type of conversation.
But
at pre-series, not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily. And if you have such an investor at pre-series, you need to be worried.
Okay.
You actually need to be worried because whereas I can understand that there's such a desire, you need investors who back you, the founder, and put into play all the necessary accountability structures and governance structures that give them comfort about uses of capital and all that. But the moment anybody wants to begin driving the business at pre-series stage, you're done before you started. It's I'm not saying it's doom all the way. Some people could make it work, but honestly, you can't be micromanaged at pre-series stage. You're already dead then. Because things will change. What you thought you'll build will change. How you thought you'll make money will change. You need to be allowed some room for that change to happen, and people have to have some patience with you as you build that. The moment that's out of the window and you're being told, that's Series B type of conversations. At Series B, you've got people with a lot of weight that are saying, don't change course. And if you do, there's some punitive ways we will deal with you. That could be if you didn't also put the right founder protections at the beginning. So I don't think it's a fair thing for an investor to come at that early stage and start telling you, I want to know how much you spent on this computer. It happens. I want to know, how much toilet paper you're buying. I want to know how many pens you people are buying. You have a board meeting. Allow me to give a finance report. If not, get out of the kitchen and let me find another investor. And this has frustrated a lot of Kenyans and a lot of African startups, because sometimes you're so desperate for your idea to work, you take money that just torments you. I've done that before and never do it again.
Ooh. I think the magnitude of this conversation is beginning to dawn on me. And it actually brings me to my next question. You've mentioned the word unicorn a lot. So from a dream perspective, from somebody who's setting up a business, from somebody who's starting a business, where do you break the limitations of for you to even dream of a unicorn? For those who don't know what a unicorn is, he said it before, it's $1 billion business. Somebody who's seated here is having the conversation, and I actually believe that's what you are in the process of building. So where does your mentality get to that even at the beginning that you are able to have that dream without it being a fantasy? I think the magnitude of this conversation is beginning to dawn on me. And it actually brings me to my next question. You've mentioned the word unicorn a lot. So, from a dream perspective, from somebody who's setting up a business, from somebody who's starting a business, where do you break the limitations of for you to even dream of a unicorn? For those who don't know what a unicorn is, he said it before, it's $1 billion business. Somebody who's seated here is having the conversation, and I actually believe that's what you're in the process of building. So where does your mentality get to that even at the beginning that you are able to have that dream without it being a fantasy?
Let me first say, I think Kenya is way overdue for a unicorn.
So you're saying we don't have a unicorn in Kenya right now?
Not as you and I speak at this point in time. We don't. And when I say a unicorn, I don't know what the valuation of Safaricom is. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about big corporates.
Yes, and a Safaricom is not a startup.
It's not a startup.
Yes.
I'm dealing with people that have started a business and eventually worked their way to become a $1 billion business plus. Nigeria in the last 3 or 4 years has just had 3, 4, 5. They're just throwing them out there. And some of the businesses Nigerians have begun are businesses that Kenyans began a long time ago. And you know, with all humility, Kenya is without a doubt a tech force to reckon with in Africa. So why we don't have a unicorn has a lot to do with either our models of how we look at businesses, how we raise money for those businesses, how we do that. So the first thing I think that needs to happen, Richard, is that ceiling needs to be broken. This limitation that it's not possible to have a unicorn, or it's never happened before, I don't even have such ambitions. Once it started happening in Nigeria, I mean, even the one that was valued at $1.3 billion or so, Flutterwave eventually is now I think at 3.6 in less than a year. It just keeps happening. Once you reach that, you start going. But at the same time, there are people who have a problem with the fundamentals of those valuations. Because do the business unit economics really make sense? So there has to be a balance around unit economics and that. So I pray that in Kenya over the next 24 months to 36 months, we get to hear of 2 or 3 unicorns. I really hope I'm one of them. I don't know, but we're working hard in that direction, because I think for the younger generation, once that ceiling is broken, you'll start to see them popping up quickly. What happens when that when you have a unicorn, the global attention of your country also people start to pay attention. So what has happened in Nigeria is a lot of investment banks and groups are paying a lot of attention to Nigeria, even to Africa, as a result of some of those companies getting to that point. So when we come to Kenya, it will do something for the younger organizations, the younger companies. And so groups that I've seen that are helping, groups like Endeavor that are helping a lot of young companies or younger companies grow, scale, groups that are looking at connecting, opening those doors, those become vital to the younger generation, or those who are starting younger businesses, not necessarily younger generation, but those who are starting young businesses. I believe scale, the type of capital, speed to market, all these things factored in together start to make a big difference around reaching that type of status of a unicorn. Or let's not, if you don't want to be over ambitious, even a business valued at over $50 million, $100 million, it's achievable. It's achievable. It's so achievable, Richard. We just need to support one another, see these things happening in surrounding markets, and begin to build in a very smart way. We have to stop building just for Kenya.
I was going to ask, sorry to interject, but just to ask you that, is that then what made you dream? Your perspective is already, listen, you have a more African perspective than a Kenyan perspective, where you're like, our brothers are doing this, so why can't it be done here?
I don't even have an African perspective. So the business I've started has offices in Silicon Valley and in Nairobi. Why not? It'll cost me as much to have an office in Lagos in rent. And the perspectives of how people view you when you do that are different. Are you with me? They're different. So I'm sending employees from Kenya to America. I am. And they're gonna build. And they're building for our business. And we're realizing that there's some dynamics that are to our advantage there than here. Having the companies registered in Delaware and through the Silicon Valley are better in terms of prospectus for raising capital than they are necessarily for raising money only in Africa. So there is what I call a lot of lazy capital in Africa. It wants to see 10 years financial statements, brick and mortar, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, to be honest, it's okay, but it's annoying.
Yeah.
Things have changed. That's like using, let me find the right example because I have to find. That's like using MySpace for communication. In today's age. That's like using Windows 95 for a fintech.
It's like using a MacBook Pro to write a letter.
Thank you. More like using an aerogram. And I know there's a generation that has no idea what I just said. To write a letter in 2022. And I've had conversations where people are like, no, I'd rather, we'd rather buy a bank. It's digital age. And I'm praying younger people come and disrupt the living daylights out of some of that thinking and change the way a lot of these companies are going to think, right? I mean, who thought? I was being told the other day by one of my investors about this whole new cyber world. What is it called? Oh my goodness, I have to remember.
The metaverse.
The metaverse.
Metaverse, yep.
I mean, look at the metaverse. Whoever thought that we will have a virtual world that people are investing heavily in? And so
I own a piece of land in Decentraland.
Thank you. You see, and you start to look at things like that, and how companies are looking at this, and someone is still telling you, you need to be introduced to our bank by another banker. It doesn't make sense. So I'm of the school of thought that let's disrupt this thinking, because for that next generation to get access, and it's the same way I think about real estate, it's the same way I think about housing for the next generation. Disrupt what's old. When Safaricom decided to put a cell phone in the hands of a watchman, the game changed. The moment you are about humanity and making some changes on what it is you really believe in, you will see what will happen. So I want to see 20 unicorns in Kenya. I want to see 100 unicorns in Kenya. Change the game. Change the game. What are we going to innovate? Open up offices in multiple countries. And now that you can do it virtually, you don't have to have necessarily physical presence, but it does a lot for your story. It really does.
Story is key.
Story is key. At the same time, you have groups like Trigger that raised their first capital just by having only a Nairobi operation, not even Kenya. Right? Raised $50 million from Goldman Sachs and co. It's public knowledge. I'm not quoting anything there. But they only had business in Nairobi. So it's not necessarily that you have to be in New York and all. I don't know what you're trying to do, but if you're selling bananas like Trigger and fruits and vegetables and eventually growing to what they've become today, then localization may be very key. If you're doing fintech and you're looking at solutions, payment gateways, why limit yourself to one market? Flutterwave didn't limit themselves to one market. The whole payment gateway system is globally applicable. Globally applicable. And that's why they get those kind of valuations. So don't give me a payment gateway that can only work with MPESA. You've just killed, this fascination with just, even MPESA are trying to be global. So build for their global thinking and become a global partner for them and give them global solutions. Then you're talking.
Hold on. You've mentioned something so key there. That's a way, from a business perspective, from a business idea. What you've talked about is figure out what, just to give somebody a business idea there, what you've just said, I don't want to run over it. There's an existing corporation, entity, company, business that is looking for a solution. Rather than you go and start from scratch to be that business and get the market share and everything, come up with a solution, sell the solution to them, and become and have
a global partner for them and grow by client. That's how the IBMs of this world grew. That's how the KPMGs of this world grew. You'll find Coca-Cola in Atlanta have a policy. Maybe, I don't know who their auditor is, but they'll say our auditors globally are Price Waterhouse. Good luck, Kamau and Richard and Sons auditor company trying to get the Coca-Cola contract in Kenya. You can't. Those companies grew by client. And so you can grow by client. And you can scale by client, and you can acquire through clients, and clients can acquire you.
With your first company, Mode, that's how you grew. You grew by?
It was my second one.
Oh, sorry. My bad. Sorry. My bad.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
With Mode, part of your growth across the continent was because of your partnership with Airtel.
Yes. So Airtel grows. Airtel says go to other markets, I go. MTN says go to other markets, we go.
Yeah, but you are also not exclusive with one partner.
No. So you grow by client. You grow by sometimes acquisition. You grow by partnerships. You can scale based on how you strategize your scale strategy, and you can also decide you don't want to grow outside of your market, but you're making enough happen in that market. You're looking at depth of that customer base and decide I want to drill into this customer base until I have 80% and not 20%. I'm not in the shallow end of my customer integration and relationship. I'm at deep end status, 80%. I've drilled into Richard until 80% of him uses me.
Yep.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
Safaricom have done a good job with that.
Exactly.
My question as we transition, but I just want to ask this one more from the investor perspective. Again, you're right. We can spend 7 years talking about just the investor conversation, but I want us to touch on other things. African investment, has that opened up? Is there, are Africans investing in Africa? I've heard you talk about American investment and Europe investment. Are we improving? Or does a young person starting a business, a fintech company, have to immediately start looking outside? African investment, has that opened up? Is there, are Africans investing in Africa? I've heard you talk about American investment and Europe investment. Are we improving? Or does a young person starting a business, a fintech company, have to immediately start looking outside?
I'll tell you a truth that will shock you. I think. let me tell you, and then you decide whether you're getting shocked or not. I think Africans can be very diverse in their mannerisms and their loyalties and their patriotism. You will find some of the reasons the Nigerian narrative is really working globally is because the guys running some of the investment banks in New York are Nigerian second generation. Are you with me?
I'm with you.
They are second generation westernized, but they feel we have to do something for home.
Yep.
And therefore they link up with their brothers who are doing great things and they make it happen. I'm not tell you about Kenya. So we as Kenyans, I think, have a fundamental, I don't want to say Kenyans, Nigerians are unique in the way they look out for each other, and a few African countries are like that. You will find maybe even Egyptians behave like that, people from different parts of Africa, but Kenyans don't behave like that. We are not as loyal as far as I'm in New York. I'm running an investment bank. I want to make something happen for Richard because he's a Kenyan.
The Ubuntu.
That Ubuntu-ness. Kenyans are like every man for themselves and God for us. I don't want to generalize.
Yeah.
It's not fair, but I just want to tell you, in that world, what I've seen is there is a desire by a Nigerian working at JP Morgan or at Citibank to raise another Nigerian. It's not necessarily the case for us. So Africans investing in Africans is an interesting theory, but I can tell you African influencers influencing African investments, it's happening.
Fafanua, expound.
So these people who sit in very influential offices in very large investment banks or family offices are actually consciously saying, yeah, we've made 18 investments, but let's make 2 of them African. That's happening.
Okay.
Africans with money investing in Africans, it's happening. The scale, or rather, let me not say the scale, it may be happening a lot because of small investments, but the quantums we're talking about there are not significant.
Okay.
And therefore, they don't tilt the needle much as far as quantum is concerned. They may tilt the needle as far as volume is concerned, but not quantum of capital.
I get it.
Yeah, so you may find NGOs, small companies. I gave a guy $25,000 to build a business. He lost it all. That kind of vibe exists a lot in Africa. But we've put $10 million into Richard, and we believe in what he's building and where he's going. No.
Okay.
No. The people investing in those people are not Africans.
Answered very well. Okay.
It's changing. There's an awareness. You're seeing a lot of these savannah type funds and stuff like it's changing, but we're still a little bit far from it maturing. It's not yet there. Even the funds, some of these African funds are running, are not funds from Africa. They are directed at Africa, but they're not necessarily from Africans. Yeah, which is fine. I mean, I guess that kind of money, people don't have it here. And where it's coming from then, I guess we have to figure out how to tap into it so that we become eventually those that build the continent.
As the unicorns come, the unicorns then begin to invest back home.
You create an ecosystem of philanthropists, investors, influencers, people that can convince. I mean, I saw Bill Gates at Dangote's daughter's wedding. He was sitting there. Why was Bill Gates sitting at Dangote's daughter's wedding? You think it's because Dangote has a nice name? It's because he's a billionaire. You go with him to the office and you pass by his office in Lagos. He's with Bill Gates and he says, Bill, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to do 1, 2, 3. And Bill says, that's a good idea. What do you think we should do? You don't get that kind of attention when you're not, and you don't get the influencer's attention when you yourself are not an influencer. So I think when you hear people like Strife Masiwa talk about what they're doing with Bill Gates or with Bill and his ex-wife Melinda, it's because they're some of the top African philanthropists, and these people want to work with philanthropists. You talk about how will you get the ear of the Slim family to do something in Africa? How do you get the ear of the Catholic Relief Services to fund more of these younger youth startups and all? The right people need to be having the right conversation. So when the unicorns are there, if you go right now and you say you are the first unicorn out of Nigeria, you have someone's attention.
Yep. Completely changes the
attention. And what that does is
posture.
That we change this whole. There's not much talk of unicorns in America because there's so many. It's still there, but there's so many. But in Africa, oh man, this has to change. The Forbes list of Africa needs to start changing. It's in the same names for
a couple of years. Okay.
And did you know there's no Kenyan actually on that list, is there? There's no Kenyan on the Forbes top 100.
I would wonder whether one name needs to be added because there's one that I know should definitely be there. But we'll leave that for a different conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this: you talked about fail quickly when you were speaking about entering a pioneer's market. I've got another question for you. As the founder of the business, when do you know when to close the business? So, for example, you've set up this business and like when is it like no, this is a bad idea, shut down? I feel like there are too many failure businesses
Still
operating or and I don't want to hate on them and just say no, I'm not sure about this. When should you be like, okay, call it quits? As the founder of the business, when do you know when to close the business? So, for example, you've set up this business and like when is it like no, this is a bad idea, shut down? I feel like there are too many failure businesses
Still
operating or and I don't want to hate on them and just say no, I'm not sure about this. When should you be like, okay, call it quits?
There's a book I read called Hope is Not a Strategy. Very interesting insights in that book. Yeah, there's
hope is not a strategy, but hope is so crucial for business, isn't it?
No, it's crucial, but it's not a strategy.
Yeah,
That's the truth. It's not a strategy. You can't eat hope, right? Even biblically, hope sandwiches faith and love. You know, it hangs on to something. It has to. It's a very important ingredient, extremely important. But at some point, it has to turn into tangible results, right? Even the Bible says hope deferred makes the heart weak. It can cause someone to faint when something just is always looking like it's there and it's just never there.
Not making it.
I've been there, Richard. I've been there. And so you ask a very important question. There's certain fundamental things someone has to say to themselves. There's some things you have to look yourself in the mirror and just say, let's have a conversation with me, right? It's not making sense. It's taking up all my savings. It's finishing the money. It seems to be digging a deeper hole. I can't find investors. I'm funding the business constantly. It's never funding me. It's been X amount of time. It's causing me extreme pain with my spouse. I work for my business, right? I go to work. It's a part-time thing, but it's the one eating everything. Just lay it down. Because I'll tell you, some businesses can take 4 years to make a profit. But depending on the strategy of what you decided to do from a funding perspective, it has money coming in to help it run, right? You can't survive on a perpetually loss-making business.
Perpetually, I like that.
Perpetually loss-making, no matter what you do. You also can't survive on a business whose fundamentals are constantly on a perpetual string of fundraising, especially when you're not fundraising properly. So you keep raising less than what you need, and you're back to raising. Now, to do the unicorn, you're constantly on a fundraising perspective. Series A, Series B. By the time you're done with pre-series, it's time to start Series A. It's time to start Series B. But you have a plan. I'm talking about that bakery where you just literally are borrowing money to pay salaries every month for the next 3 years.
And the business is not even making the money too.
It's not making the money. So what is it you're going to do different? So you must have those fundamental conversations with yourself. Is this just passion? You know, I go for some talks and I hear people being motivated so hard. I'm in that line of speaking to people, but I'm careful. You know, you can't motivate me to be a good businessman. I'm either good or I'm not. You know what I mean? You can't pump me up and say, don't worry, it's going to work. I come from a school of thought where I think it's time, sometimes you have to have an honest conversation with you. No, it's not going to work. No, it's not going to work. This business is dead. And how do I know? How long have I had to self-fund? How long have I looked for investors and they're not coming? How long do I... And sometimes it's good to also decide, let me park it for now, to see where we are a year from now while I try and rework and rethink my strategy. Sometimes that tension in a business comes so that you pivot. Pivoting meaning change direction completely. What you thought you were going to do, it's not working. And so you have to be on your... I told you when we started, the very powerful thing that can happen to someone is reaching a point of self-awareness. And self-awareness is where you have to be frank enough with yourself to say that the prodigal son in the Bible, he came to his senses after a lot of struggle. He came to his senses. There's a moment you have to come to your senses and say, I don't think this is working. I don't think I was cut out to be a businessman. Let me go get a career. In fact, I've stopped encouraging people to be entrepreneurs. I'm seeing people having entrepreneurial classes. Entrepreneurs are... Have you ever met someone they have a farmer's hand? Yeah, entrepreneurship is like that. You have to have the hand for it.
I love that you've gone into this place. Explain what it is, because what have you... And this one I want to hear from your experience. What has being an entrepreneur meant to you or done to you?
Yeah. Let me ask you, Richard, you long time ago were involved in music. Do you think you are an exceptionally good singer?
I think I was good.
Or were you a good rapper?
No, I mean good rapper. Definitely not a singer. Definitely not a singer.
Yeah. That's entrepreneurship. Just know your lane. Just know your lane. And the earlier you just get to accept it, the better. There are things you can't fake. You can't fake it. I've come to accept it. I know in entrepreneurship what my strength is. I know that I'm not sure I'm the best administrator, but I know I'm a pretty darn good innovator. I know how to put the pieces together and bring a business out, but I'm constantly looking for my right-hand person who's a very good administrator. Because if you don't know your blind spot, if you don't have self-awareness, you can't pump yourself up about your weaknesses. You will mess people's money and you'll burn a lot of bridges. And some of this stuff is extremely unforgiving. You know, this is life. It's not a rehearsal.
Yep.
When you take people's money, it's expected to work. It's expected to work for them. Yes, it can go wrong. Yes, things can happen. Yes, there are risks. Yes, things can morph into what you never imagined. But if you know you did your very best with that awareness, then it's important. So you've been a career person all your life. That's what is so good. You're so good at it. And one day you wake up and you want to be an entrepreneur because you attended an entrepreneurial class. It could work, but it will shock the living daylights out of you. I've seen that movie quite a few times. 4 or 5 parts of that movie.
Kwa ground vitu ni different.
It's different. Hey, it's different.
Difference between theory and practical.
Yeah, and sometimes you may want to come and handle or take over the business when it's at career type of stage. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like you've allowed the entrepreneur to do the hard groundwork. Then you come and continue at the point where it feels like a career type of, I need to have important meetings there. But let the right people till the ground and let the right people plant the seeds and let the right people prune the fruit, prune the trees. If you are gifted to be all those things, well done. But very few people have that. Very few. I was in a meeting with I was humbled enough to be in a room where we are selected about 3 businessmen from the world to go have a very serious session with Bill Gates. And the people in the room that were talking to him, man, I was so confused. I was so confused because those guys were completely confident in their subject matter and they did not care that they're talking to Bill Gates. They were telling him like it is, that, the problem with you is you're arrogant. You're just a guy who, I was sitting there saying, oh my God, I can't imagine this conversation with an African entrepreneur, an African billionaire. What did you say? He was there taking it all. I don't think it's gonna work. It sounds stupid. It sounds it's not thought through properly. What's wrong with you, Bill? I'm like, wow. The maturity of conversation I was hearing in that room, I admired it, I'm like, I don't know, sometimes I've been told by people who've worked near me, I'm a bit intimidating in the office, I'm like, I want to be like that. I want you to talk to me like that. Just be bold, call it out. I have tough skin. Tell me what you want to tell me. I'm very careful not to take this madness home. Sometimes my wife says I'm very soft. I'm like, yeah, you want this side. You want this side of me, because
the other side can take a beating, and it's taken time, but I can take a boardroom beating. I can, and wake up the next day and go for lunch with that person. I'm easy. I've had people who've told me, I think the idea you're building, you stole my idea. I can have lunch with that person and say, okay, let's have this conversation. What do you, it's down to execution. How did I execute? How did you execute? What is the issue? You'll find all manner of, just be an entrepreneur, man. It's like putting your face out every day for people to slap and for you to say thank you. Boss. I love it. Let me ask. There's something.
I don't know if I answered your question.
You've answered it. No, it's okay. I mean, what you've done is paint a picture that it's not rosy and it's not textbook and it's not theory.
Yeah.
And there's some stuff that you will only learn in the practical.
Yeah.
Now let me ask this: as somebody who's built, you're the one who started in the trenches. You are the entrepreneur. You're the one who, you built that thing, that mud hut with your own hands. You get. When is it time for you to know that you are becoming the hindrance to the growth of the business? When do you stop being Mr. Know-it-all? Now let me ask this: as somebody who's built, you're the one who started in the trenches. You are the entrepreneur. You're the one who, you built that thing, that mud hut with your own hands. You get. When is it time for you to know that you are becoming the hindrance to the growth of the business? When do you stop being Mr. Know-it-all? Are you get my question?
I am.
Rather than you now stay there and that business dies because you refuse to leave.
Down to self-awareness, Richard. If I can give advice to any young person, read books on self-awareness early enough. Find people that will train you and mentor you on self-awareness. Forget this pump-up mentorship of you're gonna make it. Just that's a cheering squad. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about hard truths about yourself. Like, am I short-tempered? Am I arrogant? How am I in a room with people? How am I? What's my vibe when people are around me? Is it trust? Do I just leave a bad taste in people's mouths? You need to know. You may not change it, but you need to know it. I'll tell you, that is an asset that people underestimate. You gotta know, am I the best? I was in front of a banker, very senior banker in this country. Amazing person. I love that person. And, but somewhere in the meeting, I realized he was digging the vibe of my CFO more than my vibe. I shut up. I kept quiet. Kambas say, keep quiet as if you've gone.
Keep quiet as if you've gone.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I shut up. and I let the man have his day. Self-awareness. Because I had been with someone who said the problem with you is when people come into the room, you since you're the founder, you want them to know it's you, you're the one. No, sometimes the magic is happening with someone else from your office. What's the end game? What do you want? They've fallen in love with the other person, let it roll and chill the living daylights out.
I love it.
Yeah. Just let the other person shine. It's hard, but self-awareness will start to bring out these things about, do you interrupt people while they talk? Is that your nature? Because there are people who hate that. In fact, there are investors who see that in you and back off. When they're talking to you and you want to finish the thing they are saying before they finish, the jack of all trades type of, are you self-aware? So, at which point do you know you're bad for the business? If you're self-aware, you'll know. In fact, you'll set the business up to make sure your weaknesses are taken care of. Because you're self-aware.
You know your blind spots.
Now you can become self-aware by experience, which is painful, or you can become self-aware by submitting yourself to people who can tell you and help you know how to deal with your blind spots and also how to deal with your strengths. Yeah. Are you the right storyteller about the business? If you sit in front of investors, are you the guy that just gives guys a particular vibe? Because it matters. You go on roadshows and you're boring as hell.
People buy into the entrepreneur, not just the numbers.
Not just the numbers. They buy into this guy, is he exciting? Is she exciting? But if you're dozing at your own story, so I'm not saying they want you to be excited, but there's all of us give out a vibe. You've got to figure out what vibe you give out. The people open their mouths and can't be trusted. Like, there's nothing they've done to show someone they can't be trusted. But there's a vibe that people are just like, I don't know, man.
There's something.
Something, man. The last interview you and I did, I think there was a guy who was like, I don't trust this guy. There's something about to that person. I had a vibe. They didn't think I'll build my homes. They should come and see them getting built now.
And we'll get with time.
With time, we'll talk about this. But the point I'm trying to make is,
first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
On Beulah City. It's important that we know, and not just Beulah City, even Edomex, everything else that you're building. When the time is right, I'm sure you'll be back here for us to have a conversation
we'll talk
about
those
that.
Things. Today is about this very hard subject about capital and entrepreneurs and all.
I love it.
But you will know when you're self-aware what you're not good at and what you're good at. And that is an asset every entrepreneur needs to take time to ask even Jesus asked, who do people say I am?
Ooh.
Self-awareness.
Okay. Hey man, we've got a couple of questions. I'll do a hard stop at 2 hours.
Okay.
Remember, we'll keep doing these conversations.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you pick? How do you pick your board members? And who and why are board members even important to you? But how do you pick them? What do you pick? How do you pick your board members? And who and why are board members even important to you? But how do you pick them?
End game. What's your end game? So again, mom and pop shop. Whenever I say mom and pop shop, I'm talking about you and your wife or you alone are building a thing where you have no intention of ever scaling. And you can decide the board is you and your wife. Or just you. You're the chairman and you're the CEO. But on this other side, if you want to scale, for instance, to this unicorn type of status, you pick a board that takes you there. And sometimes board is dictated by the type of capital you got. Sometimes you don't have a choice because maybe the capital you went after dictates that at a particular amount or at a particular stakeholding of the business, they deserve a board seat, maybe a board and observer, maybe 2 board seats. So sometimes it's dictated by what you raised. Sometimes it's dictated by where you're going, your end game. So it depends. When you have too many investors, it can pollute your boardroom. It can pollute your governance. But if you are adamant that you have a particular end game, and with that end game you're going to build a governance team that helps you get there, then such people, they're rare to find, but they're there. What they do, they actually help you build towards that direction. And again, I don't know, today I've really emphasized on this self-awareness.
I love it.
You then are able to take their critique and information and understanding, not personally. You're firm about your decisions. You're okay to agree to disagree on certain things, because you don't put a board together to have yes men and yes women. No, you've put a board together to drive something a particular direction. So I'd say you need to pick a team that will take you where you're going. How many people should be in a board? You can have a unicorn with 5 board members, and you can have a kiosk with 11 board members. It's how smart are you at picking the team you need to take you where you need to go.
Is this then the difference between the board of directors and the advisory board?
Yes,
where
there's a distinct difference. A board of directors can be dictated heavily by the kind of money you raised and all. And if you raise the right type of money, then it's actually the right board to take you where you need to go. So for instance, in my case, I have 2 board members from the capital raise, and then I have 3 board slots for value-driven board members who you want to select particular caliber of people that have the right influence, have the right direction, have the right status to help you get there. So the other 3 for me are Americans. And I've left those slots for them so that as we fill those slots, these become people with enough influence to help us close Series A, Series B, and become that unicorn.
Oh, that's powerful. So what I'm hearing, you've got 3 open slots right now.
Yeah.
But you've got an understanding of who you want to take those slots up.
Yeah, we're interviewing, we're talking, we're checking out. We've asked a few people, they've said yes, but we're just finalizing. So those are people who they've done. One of the people we've talked to has raised over $1 billion for his fund and whatever. So he knows enough people. They bring a lot of value to your board. Sometimes this is a conversation that's hard because sometimes people have already formed their boards. So let me preempt a different question. What do you do if the board is already formed? Well, do you have tenures or are these forever board members? If you have tenures and you want to transition, maybe transition half of them out if they don't bring you the value you need to, or explain to them that you need to bring in the right people for the next phase of where the business needs to go. That's important. Boards can kill a business. Boards can kill a business. And sometimes some of the board members you bring are professional board members. All they love to do is be on a board. But do they bring value to where you're going? I have a friend who just had amateurs on his board, but they were people, when I say amateurs, it's people who just never used to be on too many boards, but they understood, they had networks, they were building their own businesses, they connected this guy to so many, his business now valued at $250 million in just 3 years. And those people had never served on other boards. So it's not really, it's good to have experienced people, but mix your people. So I'm in fintech. I'm going to get fintech people on my board, not a teacher. Sorry.
And fintech people with the right connections.
If I'm building an education app, maybe I might need a teacher on my board, a very well thought out teacher who knows. So who's on your board and why? You have to ask yourself that question. It's not for decoration. It's very purposeful. It's very, very crucial to have the right people there. And they must make time for the business. They must make time.
And when you're getting these board members, for example, the advisory boards, the equity conversation is not a part of this. It's not.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. For what?
But and also,
unless they are sitting on the board as part of the equity they already got,
Yes.
and it dictates that a particular stakeholding requires a board seat, yes. But others need to be value driven.
Okay.
And you give them compensation, or you find a way to compensate them monetarily or whichever way for their sitting allowances. But no, you don't. You could give equity if you want. Maybe you have, a very, very influential person. You could have an extremely influential person that you feel, if I put this one on my board, it opens very serious doors. I'll give them 1% of the business. But don't be naive.
Okay, the reason why I asked that would be then, what would be the motivation for the board members to then open up their networks for you? Probably what I was asking is, how do you keep the board members then motivated to give value to the business and not just attend a meeting like always happens just for the sitting allowance?
That's why you have to really vet and know the type of people you want. Richard, there are amazing human beings out there. The fact that you could be building a unicorn will attract a certain caliber of people who want to be a part of your story.
Okay.
And are moved by your values and character and systems, that they say, I don't mind being a part of this story. I'm happy to utilize my time towards something of this sort. I'd love to have my name attached to this kind of product. That's it. You will be shocked that there are people who will say, okay, you have my attention. And these are CEOs of very large companies that are telling you, I'm interested. So put your feelers out there and let what you're building have value. Because a lot of these guys are now driven by impact, by value, by what are you changing in the world? What's going to change because of what you're doing? So right now, with what you've done with CTA, even what you're putting together, you'll be surprised who'd be happy to be on your board. People you never thought would want to sit on your board. You'll be shocked. They're like, what you're doing is making a difference. Some of these people have reached actualization stage of life. They're no longer driven by money. They're driven by you're changing the world, and I want to be a part of what you're doing. That's it. So what are you building? But if you're just bottom line driven, I just want money, then you'll also attract those kind of people. And those are usually the most painful people to have on your board, because when you're not making money,
sips water. Okay, just two more questions and definitely. So what role does passion play in making while making your entrepreneurial decisions? And I'd also add and say, maybe as the next question, kingdom. You here said you're unapologetically kingdom driven. By that I mean Christian. What then also is the balance between being a nutter Christian and bringing those values of Christianity to business in a real way? So what role does passion play in making while making your entrepreneurial decisions? And I'd also add and say, maybe as the next question, kingdom. You here said you're unapologetically kingdom driven. By that I mean Christian. What then also is the balance between being a nutter Christian and bringing those values of Christianity to business in a real way? So the passion in that.
So let me start with passion. So passion, if I remember well, comes from a Greek word maxo. Is it Greek? Yes, maxo. It literally means to wear the shoes of, to be in the shoes of what you're looking at. It means to be one with what you're looking at. Like, I am there's an element of compassion, an element of awareness, there's an element of, so because of those people I've seen who build value-driven businesses, value, like this is more than money for me, this is really down to the change I'll make in the world, the things I'll do for people. There are people who buy it, so that passion is to become one with what you're doing. And it plays a very big part, because people can tell. These sniffers can sniff when there's a disconnect between what you're saying and what you're doing. Passion doesn't allow you to separate the two. Passion enables you to really be sold out. Whether or not money comes, you'll find me doing my best to do something in this area. I didn't start talking fintech yesterday. I've been talking fintech for the last 18 years. I believe in it. I don't talk data just to get people excited about big data. I've been talking data for 18 years. I think I've earned a right to be heard in that particular. I'm passionate about what data can do for people and how you can bring good products and change people's lives because of that. I believe in it. So when I tell my stories, it's there. It's there. It's written in the thing. So that said, let me answer you on the Christian part. I struggle, if I can be very honest with you, with the Christian narrative. And I want to be careful on this subject, but I struggle with the Christian narrative because we are so passionate about being Christians. Should I say we are zealous about being Christians, but we are not sometimes willing to have the knowledge of what it means to be a Christian in the marketplace. So I take the passion of a particular scripture, or the zeal I have towards a particular scripture, but I don't know how to wholesomely. So my Christianity will not raise funds. Go pray as much as you want. What God needs is a person with the knowledge. The whole element of scholars in subject matter in Christianity is costing us a lot. So we go with zeal and start real estate companies and go with zeal and start because God is with me. But even God requires a sharpened axe. You won't be his battle axe when you're not sharpened. And when the Bible says iron sharpens iron, you have to understand, for you as iron to be sharpened, you must be losing iron. And it's painful, and it takes. So the Christian narrative here in my case, as I speak to you, Richard, I'm saying this in all humility, is we have very many disappointed Christian entrepreneurs. But when I sit, I can tell you what happened. You started completely unprepared. He says, study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that needs not be ashamed. Rightly dividing the word of truth, which means if I'm going to enter a field, this is not a scripture for pastors only. That's a scripture for people who are going to enter anything. Even when God needed to make the temple, he was very descriptive about who should do what. He says to Moses, build according to the pattern. God is obsessed with patterns. Don't just start doing things. Be very precise. Be very particular, right? If we're going to go have a legal argument on television, don't send a bishop who doesn't understand law and wants to come and tell me about the Constitution. Bring a Christian lawyer who can make a good case for the Christian body. Are you understanding what I'm saying?
I'm getting it.
And therefore the Christian narrative in the area of business capital raising, you'll hear things like, we need a Christian bank. No, there's no such thing as a Christian bank. There's no such thing. It's my view. It's my humble view, but I'm very opinionated strongly about it. Although opinions are the lowest level of knowledge, but I'm very opinionated about it. I don't think there's anything like a Christian bank. I don't think there's anything like a Christian media. There's Richard, who is a Christian, who is running media. There's Anthony, who is a Christian, who has started a bank. He has fulfilled all the right things with the regulator to begin, and has proven to know what he's doing. Then let's back him as a Christian. But there's no building that is called a Christian. So if we're going to come out and capital raise, let the investment bankers who are Christians come out and start telling people in churches how to prepare themselves for capital raise processes. Let those of us who've come out and built businesses come out and tell the honest truth to people about how rough the streets are.
They are rough.
They are rough.
They are rough.
It's not a joke. And you know, all this depression and some of the stuff is because we've pumped you up so much to come into this marketplace. But when you come here, you realize, hey, vitu kwa ground.
Different.
You know? And so I'm a proponent of a different Christian narrative. Let's have forums for honest conversations. Whether those are with people who are experts in things to do with marriage and want to tell you the real truth about marriage, or business and want to tell you the real truth about business and what to expect. But don't go for a career thinking because you're a Christian, you will be excused from excellence. And then say, God was not with me. No, God was with you, but you are unprepared. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were the best when they were compared with all the other students. They were the best. God could work with that. We've got to become good at what we do. We've got to become good at what we do. The Christian narrative has to change. If we're going to build houses, let's build the best ones. Let people look and say, that's
Nice.
a Christian. That's a project done by Christians. Not look and just find mabatis and all the structures that we have are just mabatis everywhere. And there's nothing godly about what we're doing. That's my stand.
And just to preempt the Beulah conversation, I know for a fact that part of the people who you've used in terms of the construction of Beulah City, which is a real estate project that you're working on, which is groundbreaking, but you've used the best.
The best.
And it was intentional.
The narrative.
Whether or not they're Christian, you use the best.
Not just the best, the houses are the best priced in urban settings. And I don't need to be greedy to make money. We've got to perpetuate our value system into what we do. We have to.
Okay, love it. I know the Beulah conversation is eating people, but don't worry, guys. I promise you the time will come for that conversation to happen, as promised. Okay, now for real, there are two more questions. Okay. How do you motivate yourself, especially after failure or while you are in this process of, I've just shut down my business? The thing about you, you are the perfect candidate to have this conversation. What makes you keep getting back up? Because you've had some epic failures in terms, and I put that in quotes, in terms of you have the perfect excuse to quit. Yeah. How do you motivate yourself, especially after failure or while you are in this process of, I've just shut down my business? The thing about you, you are the perfect candidate to have this conversation. What makes you keep getting back up? Because you've had some epic failures in terms, and I put that in quotes, in terms of you have the perfect excuse to quit.
Well, so there are different ways to look at it. So my first company is still there and doing very well. I'm not a part of it, but it's there. there were good lessons to learn there. My second company is still there. It's actually growing, right? And the third company is here. Everything has been a step in the right direction, right? Are there things I've tried and the timing was wrong? Yes, I tried farming, the timing was wrong. But as far as how to stay focused, I have an end game. I have an end game in mind, and that end game is I will build a unicorn. That's my end game.
I love that you're saying it even before it's done.
Yes, I will build
so right now, currently, you don't have
grace and God's help. Yes.
Yeah.
Currently, I don't have.
Currently, as we speak right now, you don't have a unicorn.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yes, and that's important to say, because somebody watching this in 2060.
Let me tell you something. I have a friend who went to they put together this amazing thing. There's a board I sit on, and they have this Harvard class. And one of my friends went, and she came back last year but won. And she said she was the MD then. And she said, Julian, it's interesting that in this class of people who've built unicorns, there are people from all over the world in this Harvard class. And I want to demystify something. So unicorns are not in tech necessarily. You can have an agriculture unicorn, right? It's about the value of the business. And she said it's interesting that a lot of these people built their first unicorn in their early 50s, mid 50s and early 60s. Then their second unicorns also in their mid 50s and early 60s. And some of them, very few of them, in their late 40s. I want to remove the notion in our minds that everybody's going to be a Mark Zuckerberg. Not everybody can build $1 billion organization at 26. So first of all, that's you
can count them on one hand.
Yes, that's a misnomer. It's not the norm.
It's an anomaly.
It's an anomaly. It's what you wouldn't count as normal. The real normal thing for people to reach that level of business is in their late 40s and their 50s. So first of all, everybody stop short-circuiting process. Take your time. Yes, do what you have to do, what you have to do quickly, do it, but take your time, because you're going to have to do the time. And these were guys from Brazil, Mexico, America, right? Spain, different parts of the world. And they were there, and they've built unicorns. Some of them are on their third unicorn, right? Because at some point, building the next one, once you've built your first unicorn, the next time you announce I'm starting a company, you have funders from everywhere wanting to back you. So it gets easier. But the first one, and the first successful business in terms of, even now, I've raised money because my businesses were not, they were successful. Hey, Richard, you don't build a business in 28 markets as a joker.
You don't.
You don't. It takes everything. It takes a lot. I had an amazing co-founder. We built this thing together. It is tough. So as I build now, I have experience. Now, right now, as I speak to you, there are people inviting me to 10 countries. I'm not interested. I'm saying I'm focused on what I know is going to work. What I know is going to work.
They're already inviting you to scale to 10 business.
I have thorough invitations. I could be in 10 countries if I wanted to in less than 6 months. That experience will never, ever disappear. Are you with me?
With you.
So the thing is, I motivate myself by staying true to the cause of what I believe I was called to do. First, I was called to help settle people, change a narrative on how housing is viewed by people. The same way that they got a cell phone into a watchman's hands, I think there's a day it should not be a testimony to have a basic need.
House.
Like a home. Right? As far as access to credit and access to finance is concerned, it should not be punitive for a person who is not in the top echelons of society to access credit. They should not be punished for accessing credit. It should not be a punitive cost for that person to access credit. Are you with me?
With you.
And therefore, in looking at what's the value that drives the things you do, if there's value, if there's a value system, The rest will organize itself.
Mm.
So stay true to the cause. I am constantly going back to God to help me rediscover me, becoming more self-aware, becoming more sincere with myself, and also exposing myself to the right material to read, the right material to, and also the right people. That's actually a very important piece. So you meet amazing people in life, but I'm making investments in very particular conversations and types of people, and that helps me grow and stay sane. And I keep at my true fundamental, which is I'm teaching the word of God, and I want to be the first disciple of everything I teach. Yes.
I'll stick just one more time on this failure, and just because I'm thinking of an entrepreneur whose business may have shut down, or COVID may have even ended it. Emotionally, I love the fact that you've got this focus that probably drives you. But how do you get out of the emotional? Because that's now the killing point, to be honest.
It's devastating to lose something you've worked on for long. It's devastating. You can lose your mind. That's the truth. You can lose your mind. You can lose energy to wake up. In fact, at that vulnerable point, many people make very desperate mistakes. You'll find that's when people will go try out tenders quickly. Just seasoned entrepreneurs, you'll start wanting to do crazy things because now you're trying to make up for loss. And that's a moment of a thorough sanity check, because it's devastating. First, you get filled with a lot of fear. You get filled with anxiety. But I want to tell people this, and this I've seen it happen. Please don't lose your sanity. You don't have the luxury of going nuts. The only way to recover is to first make sure you don't go nuts. So first you have to keep your sanity. Whatever has happened, it's gone. Keep your head focused, because if you don't get back in the game, you're dead. Number 2, don't try to do something you're not good at. The thing that failed is probably what you're good at. You gave it enough time, it was gaining momentum, something happened that just crushed it. There's a treasure in there. You go back fishing in the same lake, right? Jesus told Peter to go back fishing. He didn't question him. He was an expert fisherman. But he said, I've toiled all night, nevertheless at your word. And he went back to the same lake to fish, and this time he caught. And sometimes we just need a different mindset, a different word to go back to the same waters, and we'll catch. So I want to encourage someone who may be there to say, look, you may feel like the world has come from under your feet, but please hear me clearly. Don't lose your mind. Become very self-aware right now. Catch yourself. Stop snapping at your spouse or whoever you're snapping at. Catch yourself. The thing can be built again. It's really just a matter of time. If you take what you've thought through and built. When I woke up and decided I'm building again, I was able to raise enough money faster than I've ever raised. Yet I was busy looking down on myself. So I want you to know it's possible to get back in the ring, but use your experience and be honest with people about it. Don't try to camouflage it. Be honest with people about it so that they can trust you from the get-go, because chances are they'll have done their homework if they're gonna fund you. And don't exaggerate truths. Just be honest with yourself, but get back into your game. Richard, that will keep you sane, is to see it beginning to work again. That's one of the things you can do for yourself. If that's not possible, then get something to do and get your hands busy.
Mm.
Just don't stay
Idle.
It will eat you and you will sink into a depression faster than any midnight train. You will sink into a depression. Don't play with this thing, it'll kill you.
Mm.
And by the way, 5 years can go just like that. Just like that. You can be idle for 5 years and not realize, and your flavor will no longer be as appealing. When you come back, you'll be talking a very old game when the world has moved on. So the longer you take to reinvent yourself, the more stale you're becoming. The world is moving at such a fast pace that you can get stale in a year. So get back in the game now. Or just forget it.
This is definitely the last question, man. I feel like this masterclass has definitely been what it is.
Yeah.
This class in session on business and on entrepreneurship and raising.
You've been asking me 2 questions for the last 10 questions.
No, this is the last one, I promise. This is the last one. Man, I had so many more, but I'm like, no, I put a hard stop at 2:00. So I want to understand one of the biggest problems that we have as entrepreneurs and business people in today's day and age is employee retention. So at this stage, when you're doing business, how do you retain employees? How do you prevent high turnover? Because you're the pioneer. I speak this as somebody who did this in business, and I saw people look at my staff, offer them 10 times more, they're Audi. Offer them better perks. How do you retain employees? I want to understand one of the biggest problems that we have as entrepreneurs and business people in today's day and age is employee retention. So at this stage, when you're doing business, how do you retain employees? How do you prevent high turnover? Because you're the pioneer. I speak this as somebody who did this in business, and I saw people look at my staff, offer them 10 times more, they're Audi. Offer them better perks. How do you retain employees?
I at this stage, I work with friends. At my older age, let me tell you, and I work with friends who know I love them. And I work with friends who I say, if something better comes up, take it. And they never leave. I don't know what other formula to give you. I work with friends. I genuinely love them. They know I care deeply about them because I found out it has nothing to do with a paycheck. I tried all those things. Man, I even built a whole Google environment for people. I put
Canteen.
Canteens. I did stuff. I fed people. I gave them free juice, whatever. I did a place for them to come and feed their kids. If the kids want to come and do a work day with their parents, I built the rooms. People still left. And people still got upset. People still... So I changed formula. I said, what should I do? I sold vision to people who really care for me and who I care for, and they said, let's do this. And I've seen those people in the beginning when I couldn't give them a salary. They did 6 months with no pay. And now they're fine, but they knew I'm in this to stay. Because first of all, I also left the door open. I said, if something else comes up, run, because I want the best for you. When people know you want the best for them, people know you genuinely love and care for them and their families, you're an asset. Why do I want to go work anywhere else? I could go to that big company, they'll give me the check, but then I have to work 19 hours. They expect me to jump every time they say jump. No. Sometimes, especially more mature people, they're looking for family. So I built a family. That's what we are.
So, but my question now then expands to when one of your family members can't do a certain task or don't have the certain skill, and you've got to employ somebody outside your scope.
Yeah. We adopt another family member.
Oh, they come into a culture.
I'll tell you, they come into a culture. Actually, you build a culture, you build a community, right? Which is exactly what I've also done with church. I don't just want to have a member, I want to have a family. It's a community. What do you benefit from being in this community? There has to be a benefit. And so that, I'll tell you, Richard, it's an amazing culture to have. I wish I had discovered this earlier. It's an amazing culture to have when you genuinely do care for people. That means you're very selective who comes into that culture. Very. Because you don't want anyone coming to spoil the family. So I've become that, but at the same time, I've become tougher in understanding that, hey, you can hop jobs anytime, but it's become a free world. But it's tough out there. It is tough out there. This environment I've created for you, it's not going to be easily replicable. So I've created a very tough environment for you to live. And I'm not talking about nice offices. I actually realized it's not the hardware. It's the software. It's the software.
And neither does that mean you being babied. I mean, babying your people.
All, I have no babies. I hired adults. And let me explain. Sometimes even a 28-year-old can be an adult in terms of workplace. I hired adults in the sense that I needed to know you don't need to be given work hours. You don't need to be told what time to be in the office. You're so driven by what it is you do. So I was very selective about the culture. Very selective this time. And I've started doing it in all my organizations. So that culture-wise, yes, we're motivated by what we earn, but there are certain other fundamentals that matter more. And so we've created a very neat type of organization driven by just the fundamentals of humanity. And once you do that, you will actually find retention becomes easier. But supposing you become big like a Microsoft and all, you can still retain a culture. Chick-fil-A have a culture in America till today.
Google have a culture.
Google have a culture, right? Well, they've had to change theirs. because people just became a little crazy. But even an organization as big as a Google, IBM have a culture. So I think once a company starts to take on that culture, retention becomes, and some of those people stay. Warren Buffett has a culture about his companies. People start to stay because the value system of Richard works for me. Not the paycheck of Richard, the value system. You know what? I want to work for a man like this. And especially for the young generation and the next generation, those things are becoming more important than a paycheck. The paycheck matters, don't get me wrong, to them, but they're like, no, I don't want to work here.
And you don't feel it, that word feel.
It. It's not working. And you can't ignore them. They're the biggest spenders. They're the ones with the highest. You have these stats much better than
they're the biggest workforce.
They're the biggest workforce. You cannot ignore them. But why are they saying no to very large corporates and yes to very small companies? They have a language that you need to crack, and that language is bigger than how much money am I paying you. That's no longer a sexy thing as far as work is concerned. Yeah, it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. Did you come for my dad's funeral? Did you show up for my baby's first birthday? What are your thoughts about my future? How do you feel about certain fundamentals? Are you present, or are you just the very high retention will be found with people who speak that language. Very high turnover will be found with tyrants.
I've realized care has become such a huge fundamental business principle.
It is.
Or the DNA of the business, care has to be there.
You see, the Bible told us that a long time ago. We just thought we were too smart.
I love when you go here.
Yes.
For Noah, break it down for us.
It did. He said the greatest of these is love. You want to retain people, love them. It's the greatest. All these other things don't. This is the greatest of all these, and it's evident throughout history that where you've had kings. What brought about the French Revolution is when the queen was told that people have no bread to eat. And she said, why don't they eat cake? Ooh. Why aren't they eating cake? That's where the word queen cake came from.
For real?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
The French Revolution, they were upset. Wait a minute. What kind of disconnected queen
crazy.
do we have? Did she just tell us if you can't get bread? And they revolted. And they finished that dynasty completely.
Whoa.
The point is, when you care, whether you're a king or a janitor, case in point, let me give you a very quick case. I have a friend who came to see me a few weeks ago, told me an amazing story about a university we've partnered with as a church. And in this university, one amazing leader called Dr. Sam Chand was the former president. It's a 100-year plus university. And one time he's coming to the university, he goes and he's like, finds the janitor, and the janitor is there doing his job. And Dr. Sam Chand says, hey, how's your day going? Can I get you some water? The janitor's like, you're the school president. Why in the world do you care? You know? And Dr. Sam Chand goes and gets him water and brings it. And they engage in a conversation. And all of a sudden, Dr. Sam Chand walks away saying to himself, I just found my successor. And right now, the guy who's the president of that university is called Dr. Benson Karanja. And he took over from Dr. Sam Chand.
He was the janitor.
He was the janitor.
What?
When people know you care and genuinely care, they'll stick with you. They'll stick with you. You want to retain people? Just care. Check or no check, care. It's a fundamental of life.
Oh, man. First of all, I want to tell you a big thank you for coming to Class in Session, for being our first guest on Class in Session. I mean, you have schooled us thoroughly. I'm glad because you're going to be back.
Yeah, I'll be back.
with time.
Yeah.
And the next time he comes back, I want you guys to be the ones that are asking the questions. So he's shared so much. If you've got any questions throughout all these different videos, please write them. Derek and myself and Nick, who's here, we will curate them and we'll be sure to feed them to him. A big thank you to you, Julian Kyula.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the insight that you shared. I mean, it's absolutely amazing.
I hope it was helpful.
It definitely was.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Richard. Thank you.